Hi everyone, it's Joe from Homegrown Musician. I've been watching After Effects tutorials and welcome back to another video. So in today's episode we're going to be talking about delay, so not delaying upload schedule like me, but delaying music. So specifically 3 creative ways that you can use delay in your own songs and mixes. So as per, I'm going to put timestamps in the description below so you can skip to exactly where you want to be in the video, or you can just watch me waffle for the next 5 minutes. So first things first, what is delay? So like I said just, delay is a very common creative audio effect that pretty much spans every single genre, so it's not exclusive to one kind of music. Put it this way, you will have definitely heard delay before clicking on today's video. So if you don't know the sound of delay, here's the best way to describe it. Imagine you're standing at the top of a canyon and you scream, "Subscribe to Homegrown Musician." And you can hear it repeating multiple times. Well, that is effectively the same sound that delay gives us. So what delay units do is they take whatever you input into them, so that could be guitar, vocals, drums, whatever you want really, and they will duplicate the signal. They will then delay that duplicated signal very slightly so that it plays after the original signal, which gives you a delayed sound. Now every delay unit on the planet will have these 2 functions. Delay time, which changes the distance between the duplicate and the original signal, and feedback, which gives you a different number of repeats. So a very low feedback will give you 1 delay, and a very high feedback will give you multiple. So depending on the delay unit you use, you'll probably have a lot of other features as well. So EQ, colour or warmth come up quite a lot, which will just change the sound of the delays, and a lot of other delay units give you the option to have multiple patterns playing at once, which is really good for exploring different rhythmic options. So now we know how delay works, on to the first tip. So I didn't really know what to call this effect, and the only thing I could think of was time warping, not only because of how it works, but because it also sounds like you are literally travelling through time when you use it, so it's a dead cool effect. So first of all, a little bit of background. The very first delay effects were actually made using reel-to-reel tape machines, and their sound was incredibly iconic, so much so that most of the plugins that we use today actually emulate the sound and behaviour of those tape machines. So one of the cool things about the reel-to-reel tape machines is you could actually speed them up and slow them down whilst you were using them, and this affected the sound of the delays. So if you sped them up, the delays would compress and rise in pitch, and if you slowed them down, they would stretch out and actually get lower in pitch. So this is what I've personally dubbed the time warping effect, and it's actually really easy to replicate in a DAW. So firstly, choose something as your input, so I'm going to use guitar. Step 2, apply a delay effect either to that channel or to a bus. So step 3 is to automate the delay time function within your plugin where you want the effect to happen. If you want the rising effect, you need to decrease the delay time. If you want the slowing down effect, you need to increase the delay time. So you've actually now made that effect. It's really simple to make, but it sounds incredible. So it's a very niche effect, and I wouldn't really use it on something like lead vocals, but it works brilliantly on things like risers, particularly if they're before a drop down or leading into a new section. So tip number 2, slapback delay. So slapback is a very specific style of delay, and it's most commonly associated with country and rockabilly music and the guitar recordings of the 1950s. And as I play guitar, I'll give you a quick example of how it sounds. So despite being associated with stuff like country music, I actually think slapback is a fairly versatile effect that can be used all over the place. So I personally love it on melody lines, so stuff like lead guitars and lead synths, and I also quite like it on things like vocals, particularly like shouty rap style vocals. Now the reason for this is because if you put a reverb on something to make it sound like it's been recorded in a room, that can sometimes take away from the energy of the performance, and it just makes it feel a bit less punchy. But using a slapback delay instead of a reverb makes stuff sound like it has an ambience but keeps all the original punch, because a lot of the dry recording still comes through. Now to make slapback delay is actually really simple. So slapback is defined by the slapback. So it is just one very distinct delay. So the first thing you want to do is turn your feedback knob all the way down so you just have 1 repeat. The next thing you want to do is move your delay time to somewhere in the region of about 120 milliseconds. If your delay time's working in musical notation, there should be an option to switch that. Now, slapback works best in this region, and it can get a little bit quicker, and it can also get a little bit slower, but if it gets too quick, you won't hear the effect, and if it gets too slow, well, it's not really a slapback anymore. Now, if your delay has something like an EQ section, you'll probably want to cut the extreme lows and highs just to keep things clean, but as well as that, slapback is renowned for being quite a mid-rangey, present sound. So, if your rap vocals are feeling a little bit weak, instead of a reverb, try a slapback. So tip number 3, turn off the stereo link. So most delay plugins are actually in stereo, which means they have an independent channel for the left and right hand side of the mix. However, they use a stereo link to join the two together. So for example, if you make a change to the left hand side, it will make exactly the same change to the right hand side. Now, whilst the stereo link is a really useful function, it can be a bit creatively inhibiting, and when you turn it off, it massively expands what your delay can do. So the most obvious approach to take when you turn the stereo link off is to make both sides look really different to one another. So for example, a really long delay time on the left and a really short delay time on the right. Now this is a really effective creative tool, and it will make your stereo feel much wider and give you some really interesting rhythms. Throw a fancy reverb on and you're basically explosions in the sky. So a slightly more reserved approach can also work quite well. So for example, what I personally like to do is just vary each side ever so slightly. So a slightly different delay time, slightly different feedback, maybe a different EQ, and what it does is it still feels like you only have one actual delay going on, so there's not loads of rhythms flying everywhere, but it feels slightly wider and slightly more open in the mix, and it just really helps bring things like lead lines out, as opposed to feeling like you just threw a delay on there for the sake of it. However, either approach is completely valid. I've certainly used both, and the way to go is to use the one that you prefer, or more importantly, the one that suits the piece. So those are my 3 tips for using delay creatively. Now, whether you're a seasoned pro or you're a complete beginner, I really hope you understood what I was banging on about, and at the very least, I hope that I taught you something new, and that you might even use some of these effects in your own music in the future. As always, if you enjoyed, please remember to like, share and subscribe, as it would massively help the channel.